Welcome back, guys, to the Ibrahim and Kai podcast. And today it's episode number, I think, 32.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the second episode of this year. And, we haven't been recording much, but we're getting through it. And, yeah, hopefully we can do more soon, coming in the next few months. I'm hoping that for the best. So, first of all, how are you doing, Kai? How's it going with you?
Well, I'm doing fine. I know you were not doing okay for the past.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. So I was a little bit sick. I had COVID and now I'm recovering. Actually, I recovered. And
you had
everything's all right now.
What is it called specifically? The
Omicron, I think. Yeah.
God bless you.
Yeah.
I hope you're okay.
Yeah. No, I'm doing good. And yeah, I'm excited. Actually, I'm excited for today's episode because today we're talking about editing. We're talking about post-production in general and sharing our experiences, stories, some of the things that we have experienced while editing. What are some of the things that we dislike about editing, and maybe some stories about Premiere, DaVinci, and Final Cut, comparing the softwares. And I actually want to start with a question, Kai, right? Mm-hmm. Because I remember when I was doing my internship at Al Jazeera, I had this I heard this from one of the editors, and there was this question. It's when do you know when an edit is finished, right? When do you know when you're done with editing? When do you know when everything is done, the cut is finished and this is what you can do? Mm-hmm. And I guess the discussion when we had that was that an edit is finished when you decide to finish it, right? Because there's really not a certain rule to it, a defined rule, but it's just that you get a sense of feeling. And this is one of those things that is really specific about editing, because editing is hugely about feelings, when you try to make a certain cut and when you try to move from one shot to the other, and how much should you stay on this shot and how much should you stay on that shot. It's really a lot of it, it's very much influenced by your feelings, right? Because when you edit for quite a long time and you kind of learn the some of the techniques that are there, you kind of start to get a sense and a feeling as to when a cut sounds and looks right,
Yeah.
And so going back, an edit is finished when, I think at least, I think it's finished when you decide it's finished, right? And this obviously goes back to your experience and to your knowledge about, making movies and making videos and cutting over and over and over and learning. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, what do you think about that? When do you think an edit is finished? And when do you decide actually when to finish a video that you're working on, or perhaps even a film? And yeah.
But first of all, I think these things, like you said, it's so flexible because everything is based on your feelings, right? I almost imagine it like a Play-Doh. Do you know a Play-Doh? What is a Play-Doh?
No, not really.
It's like a clay thingy. When you're a kid, you can make it into a ball, and then it's very colorful. It's like those. It's almost like you can always remove something and you can always add something. But there was this one point when you make the Play-Doh, you feel okay, there's nothing I want to take away and there's nothing I want to add to it. And you usually will have this feeling. It's it's spot on because you don't want to add and you don't want to remove anything.
Yes.
But I do feel editing has two layers of this thing where you say it's done. The first one is when the editors feels like it's done, and then there's the second one, which is the director's decision, right? And for an editor perspective, I feel obviously is how he understood the story and how the director gave him the direction, and he would do the editing. But usually director and editor, they go hand in hand and they do it simultaneously.
Mm-hmm. Actually, one of the things that everybody wants to be a director, but actually I truly believe that a lot of the story, huge part of the story, is told in the edit. And I want to say this, the difference. I think the difference between a director and an editor is that the editor provides a vision and gives a sense of direction towards that vision. A director kind of instigates, it kind of influences people towards that direction. But an editor has more of a shaping role. An editor shapes the story, right? Because even before the director sits with the editor and decides and discuss, the editor have already taken hundreds and hundreds of decisions, right? And how the story can play out. Obviously, there's always a structure and there's always things that are planned, you know, and agreed upon. But it's always that the editor has a lot of, dude, I feel like as an editor, you have a huge responsibility in making the story, because, like every little decision that you make has an influence, right? You're constantly making these decisions that are shaping the story. If you hold on too much on this shot, then like that might influence a certain feeling. And if you hold a bit lesser on that shot, then that might completely change the tone, and cutting quickly, cutting slowly. It's just a lot of decisions that you're making that are shaping the story in the edit.
Editors are definitely like, when you see like a really good one, it's I feel like they're often, I don't know if people agree with me, but I feel like the editors are really underestimated. They're like not underestimated. What is it called?
Represented.
Yeah, like they're so important, especially when you see a really good editor. They make things so much better. Like, literally everyone besides the director helps execute the story, because the director is just the vision, and he has I would say like a pretty abstract idea of how the story is going to be like. And literally the cinematographer, editor, the gaffer, everyone is going to try to take the idea of the director and shape it into something where they feel fit the story. But the editor is basically like the last control, like the last quality control of this whole thing, right? He's going to literally take everything from everyone, and he's the one who has all the ingredients to
put everything together into
to mold
the
story into like the final thing, So it is, I'm not going to say it's the most important, but it's definitely a very crucial position in filmmaking. So I haven't seen I haven't personally met a really good editor. I wish I did, but most of the time here in Taiwan, directors, they edit themselves, because we don't really I cannot really think of it. Maybe I haven't met enough people, but I do wish that there's a good, like, do you prefer to edit yourself, or would you if you can find a really good editor, would you hire an editor?
I would definitely hire an editor. Why? Because as a director, right, you only have one mind, right? And you only have one vision. But when you have another editor, then that editor can take your vision and expand it and push it forward, right? And give you new ideas and new insights that you wouldn't have been able to know, right? And you can still have your own vision and you can still direct him in a way, but that editor kind of acts as a second mind for you to kind of check your mistakes and push your story forward in new directions that you would have never thought that you could push, right? And that's where the role of the editor comes in, right? Because they can take what you have and push it more and more forward, especially a good editor, because they play a huge role in storytelling, and especially covering up some of the mistakes, if you have a story or if you have a shot that's not quite refined and quite well done, then an editor would take that shot and would try, like, through cutting, through experience and storytelling, they can cover up a lot of the mistakes that you have made. And actually Walter Murch, who is the editor of, I think, Star Wars, right? He had so like I was looking, like one time when I was editing, I was looking how or what are some of the things that I can follow, or some of the rules, some of the guidelines that I can follow that can make my editing better. And I found these like 6 rules for Walter Murch, where he talks about he talks about them in order, and it's like, how do you know when a cut is right? Like, how do you know when you cut from this shot to that shot, like your cut is right? And he gives you like some sort of guidelines. So one of them is like, you cut first of all for the emotion, right? And then you cut for the story, and then you cut for the and then he has like the continuity is like one of the last things, and
does it have to be in order, or is just like all the elements?
He had some he had them like in order, right? And like the most important thing is like emotion and story, right? Continuity really doesn't matter, because actually, and that totally makes sense, because if you think about it, like, why do people go to cinema, right? You go to cinema to get a certain feeling, to feel a certain way, and the way you structure your scene, the way you you compose it and you form it in a way that eventually serves the story and to give a certain feeling for the audience. If you hold very little like amount of time on this shot, then you're basically trying to like convey a certain feeling of urgency. If you hold more on that shot, then it's more slow, it's more
I completely agree with that, because I did find some cases where I saw some people like nitpicking. I remember specifically was Martin Scorsese's movie, and then people say, oh, there's an issue with continuity here at this minute, this second. But the thing is, it only happens, like you only notice it when you're nitpicking. But the thing is, you cannot sacrifice the continuity over the emotion and the story. You cannot say, oh, I'm going to delay this shot a bit longer for the continuity, but then it ruined the emotion or the story. Yeah, that's the thing. That's why I guess that's why he had the disorder thing. And actually, speaking about Martin Scorsese, I did saw this meme the other day, and I think it's a real thing though. I found on a meme page, but it was a real thing. It's like there was this Martin Scorsese's editor. Her name is Thelma, and people ask like Thelma, say, oh, you're such a beautiful like young lady. How can you like edit? How can you handle editing such a violent film from Martin Scorsese? Okay. And then her answer was like, but they aren't violent until I've edited them.
So she's the one who was
when I read the meme, I said, that's crazy. Like, okay, so in her perspective, I guess like it's not like only her perspective, but the editor's job is to enforce the genre itself. It's like her saying that it's not violent until I made them violent. It's like, bro. It's like she made the whole thing. Yeah. Basically, I would say
shaping the story. Yeah.
Everything is come to just shaping the story. So like, I just find it's kind of opened my mind on how editors work, and I'm still learning. Like, there's a lot of things that I don't know about editor. Like, although I've edited so many things throughout these years, but I feel like there's just so little thing that I know about editors. I feel like there's,
bro. Actually, like you have the right to actually it totally makes sense that you don't know, and no one knows. Even the best editors don't know, because it's a relatively new art form. The art of editing and like cutting things, cutting footage or cutting and juxtaposition of like clips. It's a relatively new art form. It hasn't been like for more than 100 years, by the way. And so I think to this day, our knowledge of editing is still very limited and very, it's not quite there yet. And there's a lot of stuff, like there's so much more to explore and learn about editing,
Because sometimes we do forget that, like how much it affects the story. Because especially when I work with these clients, in their mind, editing is just putting the footage together. Yeah. Obviously, that's what it is, but it's not that easy. Like there's so much more on saying to that. There's a storytelling element inside. So, for example, like when we were to shoot a commercial, we often do a storyboard or like a shot list, right? And then we imagine everything to be this way, and we would give the editor the shot list and the storyboard, like on how the final output is going to be like. But the thing is, the editor still eventually will have to kind of switch the shots here and there, because it doesn't always work the way we imagine to be like. So they have to think also. I say it's a really brain consuming position.
Dude, I remember my brother told me, he was like, if I had to edit, like my brother is a software engineer, and I was like, if I had to edit, I would never be done, because there are a million decisions that you can take. Do you hold in this shot 1 second or 1 second and like 1 second and a half? I'm like
every frame matters. Every frame matters. Like I think we all went through this. Like it all happened to us where we just like struggling with just this 1 or 2 frame. It's just like whether or not we should delete it or we should add it, and whether or not the audience whether or not it affect the audience or not, we would never know. But as a creator, it kind of just in our mind it affects the story, which we will never know if it actually affects the story.
And especially when you're like really deep in it, you're like like 4 or 5 hours in, you're editing, you're trying to fix that freaking cut, it just doesn't look right. It doesn't look right, and you don't know if it's right or wrong because you've been looking at it for 5 hours.
And that's the thing. Like sometimes you have to leave the editing room. You have to get away from it, and like this is something that I do. I don't know if editors would recommend this, but sometimes if I look at a footage for like 4 or 5 hours, I'm
You
gonna
kind
have
of
to
lose the sense.
you lose
of-
the objectivity. Like,
Yeah,
like you're not objective anymore. You're super subjective because I feel like your mind just like if the editing is not telling the story correctly, your mind would still try to understand the story and tell you that it's logical. So
Yeah.
sometimes the editing is illogical, but because you've seen it too many times, you would see it logical.
Yeah.
I mean, you would see it as a logical editing, but it's not.
Yeah.
It happened to me sometimes. So I take a lot of time editing. Usually I just like edit for like
Take a
an
break.
hour. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
take a break for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and I come back again just so I can keep a very objective mind. Otherwise, it's so hard for me. I I really like I hated editing, and I used to think that I'm good at it, but I hate it. But recently I found out that I don't think I'm good at it and I hate it. But you did told me that you like to edit a lot.
I love it. I'm totally the opposite. I really love it, and I love editing because I feel like I am taking so many decisions in the edit, and I just give you so much control, bro, and it makes me like have control over the story, and that's why I love it.
Do
know?
you have this thing
but-
though? I'm curious
Yeah.
though. Do you get offended if anyone correct your editing?
Not really. No.
Have it ever happened to you though? Like, did
Yeah,
you,
it happened.
Have you faced
Dude.
those cases? Huh?
Dude, I have faced this so many times. When I was doing my internship, I was like,
Yeah.
it was solely editing. And my mentor would come and would sit to me and was like, what's this shit, bro? What are you doing over here? And he would correct me. He would tell me like, you do this, do that. And I learned so much from it. And I got I got way better at it than I was, you know?
Oh,
And
okay,
I
so
just
you did
listened
learn.
and I took notes. Yeah. And it teaches you like, especially in the edit, you see things that other people don't see because you're staring at the shot for a long time. And you usually don't have that kind of time to stare at a certain shot, and you kind of see things in a different way for quite a long. But what I really hate about editing is this fact that you have to wait for something, because after a long time of editing, you kind of lose the objectivity of it, you know? And I just don't like that because I can't focus sometimes because I have to take a break and look at it. And sometimes I would spend a long time editing something, and then I would look at it the next day, and then it wouldn't be quite right, you know. And it's like all the time that I've
Oh
spent.
yeah, it does happen. Sometimes like you take a break, the next day you come back and like, what the hell is
It's
this?
like, what is this shit? What have I done?
Yeah, it's so interesting though, right? Like, because also I remember it was really funny when I was working in my previous company.
Yeah.
We used to have to edit here and there. Like I wasn't there at the editor inside, but I had to edit a couple of things sometimes. And what I realized is whenever we finish editing something, we have to show it to the boss, the director.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because sometimes I feel like, okay, this editing is perfect. I like it. And I honestly don't think there's any issue with it because I did left and then I come back the next day, it's still okay. So I thought, okay, this editing is okay, right? And I showed it to the boss. It was like in the morning and he wasn't in a good mood. So he's like, what the fuck is this? And then he said, oh, you should change this. This will be better. I say, okay. But I didn't change anything. And then
you just kept it.
I would, I kept it. And then I wait until like I was just keep paying attention to him until he was in a good mood. And I just showed him again and I said, oh, I changed it. And he said, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
It's so good.
I did took a big risk doing this because I could have been in big trouble. But like, because I didn't even take notes on what he said because I truly believe that he was just in a bad mood. But that kind of
obviously,
your perspective is affected by your mood sometimes. I feel like
it's largely emotional, and it depends on who are you listening to. You know, if the guy if the person is honest, or if he's not dishonest, or if it depends on the type of person. The person that I was listening to and I was learning from, he was like hardcore. He was a senior editor, and so he knew what he was doing. You know. But it depends if it's a non-creative guy, like person who's telling you to do things just because he liked them this way. It doesn't mean they're right, you know. So it depends on that.
Oh, by the way, this is I'm sorry to interrupt again. There's this thing that I learned. It's so important though. I wanted I'm not a professional editor obviously, but I did learn this from my previous company. I find it so important. Literally everyone should know about this. It's like when you're showing your editing to someone, you have to consider the fact that who is this video for? Because we did face a situation where we make this coffee commercial, and this coffee it's a coffee machine, and this coffee machine company, they're specifically targeted men who are in the STEM field. It's a very interesting like target audience.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah, like they want people who are like mathematician, scientists and people who are precise in numbers, or even lawyers. I think they did mention about lawyers, but basically men who are like very want precision, because that coffee machine is all about precision, right? And so we shot this commercial it looked like a very cool technological advanced machine. Now that's how we put it, because we want to appeal to those people from that genre. So
audience,
we talk about numbers, right? So that's the marketing strategy behind the video, right? And so one of my ex-colleague, he edited it, and then he was just looking for someone to see if it's good. So he showed the video to our producer, who is a woman who really loves to eat. She looks pretty healthy. She likes to eat, and when she and when she watched this video, the first thing she said that it doesn't look like it makes delicious coffee. And then the editor, he felt really bad. He said, "Oh, is there something wrong with my editing?" But then I thought about it. Yeah, and I told him, I said, I don't think so, because she was never the target audience. Why would you even consider her feedback? Yeah, her opinion. Not that it's invalid. It all depends on your target audience, right? But do you agree with this argument? Like, you have to look at who is going to see it. Otherwise, there's no point of taking their opinion to validation.
Yeah, I agree.
Into consideration.
And yeah, I agree. And I also think one of the things I always do is that I show the cut to multiple people. And if multiple people pointed out the same thing, then there's something wrong there, right? So if somebody, like if you showed it to like 4 or 5 people, and they're just average normal people, then they were like, oh, I think there's something wrong here, and there's like the other guy said the same thing and the other person said the same thing, then there's probably something wrong there, and so like when multiple people agree on something, it's usually that's how the general audience perceives it, and that's when you go there and maneuver it. But if just one person says something, then it doesn't have to be right. You have to like take in their feedback and like try to make sense of it. It doesn't have to be right, and then you obviously get to make the decision eventually. And
like I think that's why some filmmakers, they do these test screening for their films, because they need like a large data samples from people's feedback, like people's opinion, right? Just to know that if
and lastly, what kind of software do you use to edit on, Kai?
I was gonna say that I'm a proud DaVinci user, but right before this podcast, my DaVinci kept on crashing for the first time. So, I use DaVinci.
Dude, I love Premiere, even though it keeps on crashing. They all crash. So, I tried learning. I learned DaVinci. I learned the shortcuts. I have no idea. But I learned the shortcuts for DaVinci, and I purely use DaVinci for color grading, but I've edited a couple of videos on DaVinci, but I know how to edit on it, but I just don't feel like I'm not fluent in it. I'm just really fluent with Premiere, and I know the shortcuts, I know the ins and outs of the program, and I'm really comfortable using it, and so
But how do you color grade though? So you have to color grade first in DaVinci, and then you export it and you edit in Premiere?
I don't. I make a rough cut in Premiere, and then I export it as an XML file, and then I take that and I import the timeline in DaVinci, and I color grade and export in DaVinci.
The hustle.
That's it's a hustle, bro. But you've got to do it for that color grading, because the Premiere's color grade tools are not so good, man. I don't like them. So
So like you like the color grading of DaVinci, but you like the
The editing
the
in
whole
Premiere.
user interface of like I've been a Premiere user for a very long time also, and even now, like I've been using DaVinci for a couple of years already, but if I were to get back to Premiere, I would still use it so fluently because I'm just like the interface of Premiere is really good. It is really good. So it wouldn't take me time to get used to it again, but DaVinci's user interface still have certain flaws, but I just love the idea that I can edit with the color graded. I like that idea. I don't like to just like go back and forward.
You're right, and I think also it's very important to learn Premiere because it's industry standard, right? Because like especially when you're like working at a company or you're working with multiple people, I think most of the companies use Premiere actually for editing. I think. But
DaVinci do make you feel like you're highly elevated than other people.
Yeah. No, obviously like grading is done in DaVinci, but and you know who hates Premiere the most? Final Cut users. Final Cut users just can't stand DaVinci. Premiere.
Oh man, Final Cut users. I don't know about Final Cut users. It doesn't.
Do you know who uses Final Cut though? The editor of Logan Paul. What's his name?
Oh, I know.
Hayden
Smith. Hayden Smith.
Yeah. He uses Final Cut. He's really good at it. And he's done a video recently. He like was comparing Premiere and DaVinci. Final Cut and Premiere. And one of the things that he learned is that in Final Cut, there are a lot of shortcuts that are much more intuitive and you can click on them easier, while in Premiere it takes you like 2 clicks to click on a shortcut. But I think you can change them. You can change the shortcuts, so it's not a big difference, I think.
But honestly, I use all of the program. Like I used Final Cut heavily when I was still using my MacBook Pro, because Final Cut is so fast on Mac computers. Yeah. But then I moved to DaVinci and Premiere, so I'm pretty like confident that I can use all of them, which is pretty rare in the editing world,
Yeah. Most of the people like learn one, and they spend quite a long time working on the software, and then new softwares come out and things change over time. It's very good to adapt actually.